right. So hello to everyone who comes and join us. We are here live at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue. This is a species of bat called a big brown bat. But as you can see, with all our bats here native to Sonoma County, this is not the most massive creature compared to your imagination. Well, hello, Steve. Welcome. And so this little bat is just being coaxed to eat some of his insects while we get up and running, wait for everyone to join us. And so today, here at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue, we're going to start out in our Raptor Recovery Center and check in on some of the patients that we've been seeing for a while. Then after that, we'll swing by the Key Hospital treatment area, take a look at the orphans that have been coming in over the last week, and then we'll head on over to our Bobcats. We have our 2 resident Bobcats, and we'll offer them a little bit of enrichment and talk a little bit about the Bobcats in our area. And so, good morning, one and all. And so, I'm Dan, Dr. Dan Feeding, the veterinarian for the facility. And so, this week at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue, we've been keeping pretty steady. Actually, our current rehabbing number of patients on site is about 130, so we've been able to release some more, and especially some of those juvenile opossums. And next week, just letting you guys know, we're thinking of doing something special. Instead of having a live stream here in the center, but actually live streaming the release of a number of opossums that are finally big enough to be heading out into the wild. So I'll let you know later in a couple days, how it'll shape up for next week. But for today, let's check in on who we have on site. And so there is the little western screech owl, the one that has the ulcer on his eye. So we can take a look at him first. And so he's hanging out in our little sausage cage. So if we're going to try to zoom in through some of the branches. And so this is the little fellow who, now these guys are normally asleep during the day. And so the fact that he's kind of down and groggy, that is not unusual for a western screech owl. This is, of course, our full size on this native species. I'm just going to put a glove next to him so you can see how mighty the western screech owl is. So he's a very diminutive but powerful bird. These guys do catch a lot of mice. And so his ulcer on his eye, the scrape on the surface, on the cornea, that has completely been healing very well. However, the haziness to his eyes has still remained. And so what we call corneal edema type changes, where there is some abnormalities on the surface. And so this patient is now suspected to have a particular virus, an owl herpes virus. And so in consultation with some of the folks at Davis, we're starting him on a new eye drop this week, antiviral eye drop. And so we'll see how he progresses. Previous cases when this was the case, when this was the disease that was present, tend to improve within a couple weeks. So we should know within June how he goes from there. There are always multiple possible causes for any given symptom. And so we don't have the finances to run every viral test we'd like, but we did go ahead and get the medication. So if that's the case, he should improve. And since he's chattering and wanting to come on in, we'll take a peek at our fledgling great horn owl. And so, Danielle, any concerns with this guy right now?
That's the one that's having issues with the feet.
Oh, okay. So, yeah, so we're still trying to improve his functionality on his limbs, so still giving him some time. But you can see he's very bright, very alert. That bedraggled owl that we saw last week, the one that had just been washed off from all that material that was down in the manure pile with all the severe foot injuries, he continues to improve, and so he's actually out in one of our mews. And so a very long road to recovery for that tissue to heal. Still tolerating bandages, even though out and about. And so that's a pretty promising case. And then we do have our band-tailed pigeon, the pigeon that was shot. And so still hanging out. So the injury site in terms of the wound, where the bullet had gone in, is healing very well. And so, but the mentation is still a bit dull, and so if it is indeed some lead issues, that will take some time to heal. And so, again, balancing finances in terms of everything we can test and everything we can try to approach. So still doing stable, still eating, but we may need to try to decide if we're going to be able to invest in them for lead therapy, chelation type assessment and care. So that's what's hanging out in the bird room. And so from here, we're going to make our way up to the main hospital area, and we'll check in on the orphans that have been coming in. And so for orphans, over this last week, we have seen that fundamental shift. We are not getting in as many little opossums coming in. Instead, there's another species which is taking up most of the new orphan cases, which would be typical for this time in mid-June. And so we'll take a look at some of those little fellows. Overall, the flow of intake is still continues to be on par with last year. It's typical within our typical year in terms of ebb and flow. And then do let me know if there's any questions.
Okay, doesn't look like it so far.
Right.
Just a lot of good mornings and hellos.
Okay. Welcome one and all. And so the beaver is doing very well. So the beaver is he's doing great in the water. He's functional on land, and so we're initiating conversation with the center, the area where we're in terms of setting up his most likely release down the road later this summer. So I'm very happy to see how our beaver is progressing. So we'll make sure to peek in on him one more time before he heads out. But that is looking great. So, as always, when we connect from our raptor rehab area over to the main hospital, we will be heading through our predator exclusion barnyard. I'm just going to point out a different feature every time we head through here. And so, right now, today, this stop at this 5 PPO sticks. So this is fresh. So what is the purpose of this right here? How does this help you and your farmyard coexist peacefully with wildlife? Well, this is going to be one of the best
Talk louder.
Oh, you talk louder?
Yeah.
All right, thank you. This is one of the things you can do if you have a large chicken yard. And so just having this teepee of all these big sticks, this is a place that birds can run to when they feel threatened by hawks from overhead. And so whenever there is a bird, a hawk or a potential predator flies over, first of all, the hawks are not going to be able to grab a full-size chicken. They will go for bantams, and they will go for the young pullets, but whenever there is a bird that flies overhead, you'll see the birds the chickens just head on in here, and this is sufficient to help them feel secure and actually be secure in that context. Of course, it doesn't help for other predators. There are other techniques you use for other things that you're worried about, but there are dozens of simple things that you can do to help make sure that your backyard animals can coexist with the wildlife around us. And this is just one of the many ideas, so we'll try to highlight a different one every time we head through. And the birds do choose to use this as a dusting site, and so chickens will dust themselves to keep themselves from getting a lot of parasites. And so you can augment that dust. If things are mild in terms of parasites, it'll diatomaceous earth. And then if you have more significant concerns about infestation, there are other things we'll add in there, things like permethrin powder. But anyway, there's our tidbit for the day as we head through our barnyard. And so it is going to be a warm day, so a lot of the animals are just hanging out in the shade already. And so the overall, in terms of the different...
Oh, talk louder.
What's that?
Talk louder again.
Oh, talk louder?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. So I guess if I face away, that'll be the problem. Okay. I will continue to remain focused on you guys. Thank you very much for the feedback. And so it has been mostly orphans that have been coming in. We haven't had too many injury cases. There is a few, but that is typical for this time of year. And so some of the earlier in the year offspring, depending on the species, are starting to get out and about. So some of the species that you don't usually see during the day, you might start seeing individuals out as the new young adults are finding their way in the world. And so that will happen every once in a while with things like skunks, with things like opossums and foxes. You may start seeing occasional sighting. In general, most wild animals should be wary and be bashful close in terms of human presence, but there is that displacement period where it is a bit more common. In terms of the total number of animals coming through, we're at almost 650 for the year in terms of animals coming through the site, and we are, like I said, about 130 on site. And so the big shift in terms of orphans, we have, while we still have plenty of opossums around, the big shift has happened, and so now, instead of having a lot of litters of opossums in our hospital nursery area, what we have instead, well, let me grab some gloves, and then I'll show you. And so we have not one, not two, but 4 of our hospital enclosures currently occupied by raccoon kits of varying ages. So we're kind of in the peak of raccoon time, and so we are giving both these young incubator babies the slightly more capable compared to other species. Raccoons do stay on the bottle a little bit longer. They're not dramatic like the otters or some species, but they are big. Oh, there we go. Okay. So there's that raccoon chitter. And so obviously he would be much rather cuddling with his sibling there. So we'll let them settle back in. You can go ahead and watch them for a moment. And so eyes and ears are still closed. So these guys are not yet to the point where they have full perception of the world. And so they are just basically going by feel. And so once they get disrupted, they will find each other once more, and then they'll settle on in. All right. Okay, so can you give me a hand when we head out there? All right, sorry, just a message that coordinating things for today. All right, so let's shift to a different baby. I was talking to someone who mentioned they were watching the live stream, and they had a request to take a peek at, yes, we still are getting baby squirrels. So yes, orphan squirrels do come in, and they will come in throughout the summer season. This individual, as you can tell, the eyes and ears are open, and it is only at this age that these guys are handleable in this way. The adult squirrels are extremely high strung, and you have to be very delicate and careful in terms of approaching them, in terms of their stress and their ability to even handle basic rehabilitation. But at this age, this little baby is still one that I happily am able to show you guys. And so this is a western gray squirrel. We do have several species of tree squirrel, including western gray and eastern fox being the most prevalent. And of the intakes that come through. There are Douglas squirrels and others. And then there's also our Graham squirrels that come through as well. And then while we're here, let's take a look at some of our other raccoons hanging out. These guys are a little bit more mature, so they're not going to be quite as reactive as that neonate that we saw. Just you can still hear chittering in the background. And so so with these raccoons, these guys, they still do need supplemental care. Individuals of that size, once they do start eating solid food, we do transition them towards our outside enclosures pretty soon. And we do have, dozens of raccoons currently on site at all different stages. And so the current lineup for the moment. And so Megan, is that a new intake? Oh, so I'm just trying to coordinate things so we can go smoothly for a visit to Bobcats. I saw there was a question about what happened to a couple of opossums someone found. There's no way to know. There's a lot of possibilities. Certainly, the couple common things that we see are going to be attacked by cat, attacked by dog, and then being victims of rodent baits. When people leave rat bait out, that can affect our wildlife. In fact, it's one of the most common things in a lot of, depending on the species. And so those are all concerns, none of which you can tell just by looking. It would take pretty thorough diagnostics, unless, of course, it was caught by another animal to be able to know. And so, is that a new intake at the moment, or? Okay, moving the guys around. All right, and so Rachel's able to come on out and help me for a moment in terms of shifting. So we're going to head out to our education area, where our main focus of the day. We'll talk about our Bobcats, and we'll provide a little bit of enrichment for the resident Bobcats that we have here on site. And so, Bobcats are, of course, a common species here in Sonoma County. The relative numbers that come in through wildlife rescue are not as high as other species, where we'll get hundreds of raccoons and opossums in every year. Okay, I'm sorry. We'll only get a handful of Bobcats coming through, typically every year. We'll get dozens of foxes, just for a point of comparison. And so, with wildlife coming to a rehab center, several things have to happen. They have to be injured. They also have to be near someone. They also have to be in such a temperament and condition that someone can grab them and would choose to help us out by being good Samaritan and bring them in. And so that all those are limiting factors, and that can influence what species are likely to come in. And so while the bobcats that come in are going to be less than 1% of the intake through the center, certainly that doesn't mean that the population as a whole is that low. Now, being a carnivore, it's going to be lower than some of the other species, but it is just the nature of the species that makes it so that they're less likely to happen to come into it. Now, we are so while we only will deal with that, 5, 10, maybe 15 per year, we are certainly very well versed in dealing with the mid-sized carnivore and bobcat needs. We've had individuals with broken legs, we've had individuals, one that had lost all its fur from what turned out to be ringworm. There's a lot of conditions that they can get, and so it is quite variable. But orphan bobcats, they are tougher. They are tougher in terms of worrying about socialization. A lot of species are quite resilient in terms of keeping those wild behaviors as they go through the rehab system, but those bobcats can be more concerning, and so they can be more challenging to keep wild depending on how young they are when they came in. One of the individuals that we have on site here was found just a couple days old at the wildlife center in a neighboring county, and they knew that it wasn't realistic for them to be able to rehab it and have it be returned to the wild. Realistically, for that to happen, you need to have an adult bobcat, or at least ideally a cohort of similar ages, but because of the numbers, that's not realistic anywhere. But if nothing else, at least an adult bobcat, to try to be a mentor and so there are centers that have higher numbers, or the timing is right, so they'll put different bobcats together. We have our one resident bobcat, and so we tried that, and while it seemed to be maturing appropriately, it never quite was appropriately behaving in terms of release to the wild. And so we have 2 bobcats now, and so we have our younger individual, who's one of last year's babies, which we'll see in just a moment. And then we have our older one, which has been here for a few years. And so if you want to head on down to set up down at the bottom,
yeah.
I'm going to head into it from within, like we've done with some of the other.
Sounds good, yeah.
And keep the commentary running.
Yeah, so we're in our ed loop. This is where we host tours outside of our current circumstances. We've been down here in previous live streams with the foxes and the mountain lions. Oh, and I'm going to get out of the way because bobcats are coming this way. So right now they're shifting the bobcats. They shift them into den houses so that they are able to safely enter the enclosure. Just gonna wait for these guys. Thanks, Megan.
All right, and so we can go ahead and focus on the bobcat. So this is the full-grown, 1-year-old North American native bobcat. This one is from our North Bay area, and so this is how big they are. A lot of people will, when we get calls, they'll imagine we'll get reports of 30-pound, 40-pound bobcats. That just doesn't exist. This is the typical size. Yes, the tail, that bobtail, is part of where that name comes from. And so this is our permanent resident. And so Boca's going to be with us for the rest of her life. And so now bobcats, unlike a lot of other species, I was mentioning how most species you're not going to see them much during the day. They're not going to want to come near people. Bobcats, while they won't come close to you, they are quite a bit more bold in terms of being in line of sight. And so it is not uncommon around here in Sonoma County that you may see, off on a hill away, or from within your house, you might see, if you have a very large yard, out in the yard, you might see a bobcat coming through. They will be active during the day. They will be out and about during the day. And so in terms of their behavior, some of their behaviors really are remarkably consistent with domestic cats. We were doing some work with a portable sawmill out at the Schoen Forest, and there was a large sawdust pile. And then when we came back the next day, there was some feces just buried in the top of the pile. We set up a wildlife camera, and the wild bobcats were using that sawdust pile as a natural litter box. They do tend to bury their feces just like domestic cats when given the opportunity. Some species, like foxes and skunks, we'll just have that species out there. And so what is this enrichment? What is this fascinating thing we provided for our resident bobcat? It is, of course, cardboard boxes. And so boxes, there is an egg in there, so she may be attracted to that. But when there is a novel object in there, lots of felines will be fascinated by cardboard boxes, and this native bobcat is no different. And so there is a significant bobcat population throughout Sonoma County. They do tend to support family units in a lot of areas. Now, bobcats are going to be predating primarily on rodents and other small prey. Given the opportunity, if your chicken yard is not set up securely, they will predate on chickens as well. But there are certainly plenty of fixes for that. And so they are strictly carnivorous. They're not going to be like our foxes or raccoons that are eating a significant amount of plant-based material as well. Oh, the egg rolled out. But that's not what's interesting to our bobcat here today. She is all about that cardboard box. And so there's a question of how much does she weigh. And so I don't think I've popped her on the scale in the last couple of months, but she's going to be coming in right at about probably 15 pounds. That would be a pretty hefty bobcat. Now, you can also see how sleek she is. And so there are a lot of people who have 15-pound domestic cats. Often that is because those cats are relatively overweight. You see that nice taper of her waist as it goes from her thorax up her abdomen. See that little bit of a taper from above as well. And so now wildlife do look deceptively big. Part of that is they have large frames and are relatively svelte in terms of their body condition score. Part of that is going to be how fluffy their coats are. But a lot of people, oh, we found the egg. All right, and cardboard's better. All right. And so that will be, so a lot of people's estimation of the mass of an animal will be low. Oh, okay, now there's the real treats. There's the real treats. We have, and so these guys do eat gophers, and so we do provide them for them on occasion. Now, Boca's not accustomed to having us hang out and talking to her, so she's a little bit distracted. Oh, and off she goes. All right, so she's taking that stash off to one of her favorite spots in her enclosure to be able to enjoy that snack. And so bobcats can contract a variety of infectious diseases. We've had a couple bobcats with conditions like toxoplasma, which is a protozoa that can form cysts. That's also the reason why pregnant women are not supposed to empty the litter box, because that can transmit problems with human fetal development. And so we'll head on down, as we chat, we'll head on down towards the bottom of the enclosure, see if she doesn't mind us watching her snack away. Now the bobcats do have those powerful jaws, so if we do get down there in time, you may hear the very robust crunching that occurs as they do enjoy their rodents. And so there is, and so here at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue, we are providing all our animals with food every day. With big cats, there are some facilities they'll do a fasting day to kind of mimic what can't happen in the wild, but we'll feed them every day. Certainly on the rehab animals, of course, because we're trying to bulk them up and get them out back into the wild, but for our resident animal ambassadors as well. And so part of the whole purpose of these live streams is to let you guys see our resident animal ambassadors, so you can engage with the wildlife around you while we can't have you come in but we're looking forward to opening up to our tours to the public again. Oh, we got leaves.
We're gonna off-road just a second, guys.
And so we know it'll be hard to hear us.
Oh, there she is.
Oh. And so this is a true carnivore, so not for the faint of heart to watch them enjoy their breakfast. And so with bobcats, they will hunt and they will consume rodents. Of course, not going to consume nearly as many as a barn owl will. While a bobcat will take down a few during a day, those barn owls, especially if they have a litter on site, each of those nestlings, remember, they were eating 4 to 8 nestlings each, depending on what stage of development those barn owl chicks were at. And so if there's a barn owl box that has all right, so passing up on part of the intestines, fair enough. Then you will have barn owls that will be hunting 30 mice per evening to keep those chicks well fed. And so, all right, we got there just in time to see the tail end of that. And so, while it's not the prime piece, it looks like our little bobcat here is going to consider whether to finish snacking on all of that viscera or not. And so, bobcats during the day sometimes will just be lounging out and basking, and so you may come across a bobcat in the wild just basking on a sunny slope, just like domestic cats enjoy sunny windows. Sometimes the bobcats will as well. On a day like today where it's going to hit 90, you would not expect that in the heat of the day, of course, but this time in the morning that would not be an uncommon behavior, and including for our animal ambassadors, they'll often pick a sunny corner in their enclosure and hang out. And so in terms of those little spots on the back of their head, those eye spots, those are supposed to be intimidating. So if a bobcat was running away from something even of greater risk, oh, are we still alive?
Yep.
Then those would look like this was an even larger predator from the other direction. And so, all right, so it looks like this is going to be the tail end of what's going on for our live stream today, as we'll just let the bobcat enjoy its box, its enrichment in peace. And so thank you guys so much for spending some time with us today at Sonoma County Wildlife Rescue. Again, next week, keep your eyes out. We'll let you know in a couple days, but we may shift our timeline a little bit to be able to do some live release of, the goal is to have a whole litter of opossums, the litter of opossums that came in as teeny tiny worm-like babies in the pouch of a very fractured mom. The mom has healed and moved on. Those opossums are just about ready for release, so the goal is to live stream their return to the wild next week. And so thank you guys. Everyone stay safe, and we'll see you again next week.